Welcome to the What's Your Weird Story podcast.
Everyone has at least one good story.
And some of us have stories that are just to the left of normal.
We're interested in the ones that push the boundaries of what we can perceive.
Stories that defy explanations.
Stories with an air of mystery.
Stories we might not share
for fear of being thought of differently.
But don't worry, we're all friends here. So, what's your weird story?
Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, Weirdsville. Welcome back to another fabulous episode. This is Jeff here with you guys today, the resident Bigfoot expert, voice of the listener. And joining me, as always, are your two co-hosts, Barry Johnston.
What's up?
And Adam Beebe. Hey, guys.
Hey, buddy.
That was a great intro, man.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
How are you, Hub?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well, man.
Doing well.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to have you along with us here on the show. And I know that the listeners at home also enjoy you when you get the chance to be here with us in the studio, but not literally in the studio, but on the call.
It's always great. It's a pleasure, really, is always mine to come and visit with you guys. It's a good break from my normal routine to get together with you guys and kind of catch up and talk to some interesting people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I mean, you're here because we're approaching one of the subjects that you are passionate about. The stories that we have today are pretty amazing. Pretty amazing stories.
Indeed. Those listening at home know if Jeff is here, then we definitely are going to have some kind of hair-raising, hairy stories to share about your favorite subject, as Barry was alluding to, and that is the Sasquatch. That is the Bigfoot. That is the Yeti. That is the Yowie. That is all of that stuff. Jeff, I was told, a little bird told me that you got a couple of new books for your Bigfoot library. What did you get there?
Oh, yeah, man. Okay, well, you guys heard, a couple weeks ago that I did. I had received a new Bigfoot book. Some stories on Bigfoot and encounters with man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of encounters?
And now I am a sexual nature.
Okay. Oh my.
Yeah, I guess you could say that maybe is the fourth kind. Close encounters of the fourth kind.
I love it.
So I did receive a book, and then graciously, for my birthday, I received another book of a similar nature, high quality literature, sent to me from Adam Beebe for my birthday. Thank you so much.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. I know how much you enjoy reading and reading about Bigfoot and Bigfoot encounters and how magical they can be. And so,
right. Let's really get to know Bigfoot.
Back it right up.
Have you tried? Have you read any? What are your thoughts?
Well,
so far.
My first book, I haven't got a chance to dive into my newest addition to the library yet. Sure. I did glance over it. Okay. I know there's 5 parts. I believe there's 5 parts in that book.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's 5 different stories, which I think that they are 5 different little short stories in the book.
Sweet.
But yeah, it
Amazing.
It's a read. It's a read like no other.
Oh man!
You know, and once I get into it, I'm gonna come on and we'll maybe I don't know. We'll see. Maybe have a reading or maybe just a little book review.
Yeah.
A little report.
100%, man.
You know, I'll get up in front of the class and give a little report of what I've read.
Right. Yeah. What's your weird book report?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, yeah. Today we have a guy who has a few encounters. He's based where I think you would have a Bigfoot encounter if you're going to have one, which is in the mountain region of Colorado and New Mexico.
It's we've got today's guest is Lonnie, and he is also known as De La Squatch on Facebook, and he has runs a Facebook page, Bigfoot Encounters, and that's how we met. And we talked to him, and we got this. We landed this interview, and man, it's just rich. We talked for a good long time, and we got a lot of great stories, and we've got and more to come as well. So I think this will be the first part of another 2-part episode interview, and this will be all Bigfoot oriented. And because there's a lot to be talked about and shared, and man, some great stories going from all the way back to when he was young to fairly recently as well. So I guess we should just go ahead and get to it. So Mr. Hubbard, would you care to propose the question?
I would love to. Lonnie, thanks for joining us today. We can't wait to hear this lifetime of stories that you've got. So, Lonnie, what's your weird story?
My name is Lonnie. I go by De La Squatch on Facebook. If anybody has heard of me, I also go by that signature name.
Cool.
I have a few interesting stories. I have a couple of Bigfoot stories. I've encountered a few entities at one time or another. I have several UFO incidents.
Nice.
I've lived in different parts of Colorado, and different parts had the different encounters. My most frequently asked encounter is about a Bigfoot encounter I had when I was maybe around 10 or 11 years old. I was on a hunting trip behind Pikes Peak, Colorado, with my father and his brother, my uncle, and a cousin of the family. And I wasn't old enough to hunt, but I wanted to be with the boys and hunting the whole 9 yards. A few days into it, and my father and my uncle, they did a lot of there's several mountain trails and roads in this Pike National Forest. And so we're always cruising. My father had an old, it was like a 72 Bronco. It was the smaller Broncos.
Cool.
Like the Jeep.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah. So we were cruising just all over, and there was a lot of game moving, a lot of hunters. So the game was always just moving. So we cruised a lot in different roads, and then we'd walk for a little bit, get in the truck and try this trail out, walk. So we were just doing our thing. We had already been there for a day or two, and we weren't having much luck. So we were driving down this an old dirt road, and I remember it turned into a cul-de-sac, and then from there was a little Jeep trail that continued on down the canyon. And we noticed that there wasn't really any, there was no tire tracks on the Jeep trail. So I remember my father and my uncle talking, hey, should we go check it out down there? Nobody's been down here. We've been everywhere else. So they decided, let's go investigate this canyon a little further. So we all jumped on this Jeep trail, went down, and I, like I said, it was 10, 11, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And I remember about halfway into this canyon on our left-hand side, we encountered back. This was around, I'm going to say between 88 and 91.
Okay.
But I remember seeing, I guess you would call it a teepee structure. It was as we were driving down, it was on our left about maybe 200 feet from the road. And I remember asking my uncle, my dad, hey, what is that? And they're, maybe some, they had to have been a bear hunter. A bear hunter made a blind. And it has to be a bear hunter's blind. And they, shook it off. We kept going. But I remember that. So we keep going, and we're almost to the end of this canyon. And we got so lucky. There was a 2 bucks and a doe just right off the little trail, looking right at us. And my father had a buck tag, and my uncle had a doe tag. So we all jump out of the trucks and run a little ways towards them. My uncle shoots, and he hits the doe and drops the doe. So the 2 bucks take off running up the mountain. So me and my father, he had the buck tag. We headed in pursuit. Mm-hmm. So we're going up the side of the canyon, and they would keep about maybe 50, 60 yards in front of us, and then they would stop and they'd look down at us to see if we're still trailing them. And then once we get a glimpse of them, they would turn around and keep going up. So they would run, stop, see if we're chasing them, run some more. They made sure to keep their distance from us. Mm-hmm. So we finally get to the top of the ridge, and they go over. And my dad, I'm pretty sure I'm slowing him down. It was 11 or 12, somewhere around there. And so he goes, he tells me, stay here, Lonnie. He goes, I'm not 100% sure if they're legal. At the time, there was a 4-point restriction on bucks, and they were right around that size. So we weren't 100%. He didn't want to go ahead and pull the trigger, and then, he's only a 2-point or something.
Right.
So he told me to wait there, and he was going to go over. So we're already on top of this ridge. I'm far enough to where I can't see my uncle and my cousin down below gutting the deer. We're up on top. So I'm waiting. I'm quiet. I'm excited, just waiting to hear a gunshot or something. And hey, Dad got one too. And so I'm sitting there, and from what I remember, there was a breeze about every 2 or 3 minutes. This heavy breeze would just come through, and then it was dead calm again for 2-3 minutes. Heavy breeze would come. That's how it was like in October. The leaves were already falling off. So I'm there just sitting, being quiet, just excited. And there was a lot of, it was kind of open, and then sporadic aspens here and there and blue spruces. And there was a cluster of boulders, maybe it wasn't far, maybe 100 yards away. In that vicinity, there was a cluster of gray boulders with moss on them. And I noticed something reddish brown. Just it stuck out like a sore thumb. It was reddish brown, and I could see something there. At first, I didn't. I'm just a kid. I didn't pay attention to it. So I just stayed quiet. I would glance constantly, up and down the canyon. And one of the times when I glanced towards those boulders, I kept looking at it, and I started. I noticed that when the breeze would blow by, that it would move with the breeze a little bit. So I kept looking at it, and being young and dumb, I went and I crept over to see what the hell it was. So I crept over to it, and what I saw was a huge left arm and a hand, and it was hugging this boulder.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got close to it. I mean feet. I got feet from it.
Whoa.
And it was an arm hugging a boulder, and I could see a knee about 6 feet in front of it. I was behind this. I was behind it. Thank God. Mm-hmm. So it was. I don't know if it saw us. It heard the gunshot, but I don't know if it was hiding. After all these years, when I think about it, I think it was hiding. It saw us coming up, and this thing says, "Oh," and it laid down, and it was trying to hide itself. It was trying to hide its body, and it did pretty good because the only thing I could see was this arm sticking out, holding a boulder, and I would just kind of peek over it, and I could see the knee about a foot on each side, on top of the knee and below.
Wow.
And that's all I could see. But I got a great visual of this arm. So this arm I'm looking at is massive. It's huge. The hair was about 3 to 4 inches long, and the hand was black, and it had wrinkles on it.
It had
and
what? It had what on?
Wrinkles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the hand had wrinkles. I remember the wrinkles. 5 fingers, and the fingernails were jet black. And just massive. I remember comparing the size of the hand to a baseball mitt.
Wow.
Huge.
Holy shit.
And the hair on the knee was the same thing. The hair was 3 to 4 inches long. And this thing was an auburn. It was reddish brown. All the way through. It was consistent, the same color. And the hair was kind of sticking up. You know, it wasn't, just like a wild, very wild.
Wow.
So I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? And I didn't smell nothing, but the wind was coming from behind me, going towards it. So I'm looking at it, and I count five fingers, and I almost touched it. I didn't believe, I was like, what are you looking at? I almost touched that hand because it did not move. It didn't twitch a finger. The knee never moved. This damn thing was just still. So I even went like this, Yeah, 5. It's a massive hand. And I was stupid. I was even contemplating, well, maybe you should go around these boulders, and you're going to run right into it.
Oh, my gosh.
A lot of, I wasn't expecting to encounter what I did. I was young.
Right.
So I'm looking at it, and the whole thing was maybe a minute long. So all of a sudden, here comes this breeze of wind again. The breeze came, and that hair on the arm started doing this, and I split. I took off running. That was enough to convince me whatever you're looking at, dude, is real.
Wow.
So I ran running down the canyon. I finally caught sight of my uncle and my cousin down below gutting the deer. And, being 11 years old, I was for sure this thing was chasing me. It was going to kill me. It was going to eat me, whatever. So when I saw them, I immediately started waving and yelling at them because I was so afraid. I didn't want to look up to see if it was behind me.
Right.
So I was yelling and waving like, hey, if I die, you know why. Whatever it is behind me is coming at me. You know what happened. That's the first thing that came to my mind as a kid.
Yeah.
So they kind of look up at me, and they're like, what the hell's this kid doing? And they ignored me and continued gutting the deer. So I told myself, well, thank God it's not behind me. So I ran back down to them. I'm excited and breathing heavy, and I was pointing up to the cluster of boulders. I told my uncle, I says, hey, there's I guess what they call a Bigfoot. I said, there's one in those rocks. I says, take your rifle and I'll show you. So he looks at me, him and my cousin, and silly kid, and they continue gutting the deer and ignored me.
Oh, man.
So anyway, maybe a half hour or so later, my father shows back up, and I was like, Dad, did you see that Bigfoot in those boulders? Did you go by those boulders? No. And blew me off too. So the rest of the hunting trip sucked. I had nightmares. I didn't even want to get out of the truck and scout around no more.
No kidding.
It ruined everything right there. I told anybody, all my family about it. They laughed at me. Yeah. Cousins, people I thought were close.
Yeah.
They didn't buy it, man. And so for a lot of years, I kind of didn't say much. I would always stick with my story. Yeah. But I got laughed at a lot.
Yeah.
And then I remember sometime it was within a year or so, I'm thinking, I remember one evening we were, me and my dad were watching television, and the show Unsolved Mysteries was on. And they were talking about Bigfoot sightings in a town about maybe 20, 25 miles away from where we were hunting. Wow. And yeah, it's on it's with that Robert Stack, I believe.
Yeah, dude. Right. A classic, man. That's good stuff.
But they had an episode over there behind Pikes Peak. There was a little town over there called Green Mountain Falls. And we were in the same national forest. Green Mountain Falls was not far from us. And people were seeing what they believed was a mother with a juvenile at night and stuff. And when that show aired, and my dad immediately turns and looks at me from the couch, and I said, "See, Dad?" So after that day, he's been skeptical.
Yeah.
He doesn't totally blow me off now.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first ever encounter of apparent Bigfoot.
Wow.
It's wild because that, like, if you were, it seems to me like your assumption that it was hiding is probably right, you know, or at least trying to not be seen, you know. And if the wind was from behind you, that thing had to know. It could probably hear you coming up, and it had to know that you were right there, because animals smell way better than we do. They can smell better than we do, I should say. They don't necessarily smell fragrant and better than we do, but like, that thing had to know that you were there, and it probably, if it was an adult, it would have probably known that you were a small thing coming up, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why it didn't rip your face off or something. I don't know.
We were making noise. We were crunching through everything and running after those deer. We were definitely making noise.
Damn, man.
But if you guys have any questions, or I could ask, or I'll answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That sound. I've definitely heard of. People have different descriptions of the color of the fur, but I've definitely heard of the reddish, brown, auburn, colored fur, and like you said, like 3 to 4 inches long. It's pretty consistent with a lot of things that I've heard. But it's really cool that you were able to get so close, and especially to, really inspect the hand of the Bigfoot. What you kind of described really kind of sounds consistent with like a great ape hand.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really
thinking,
they don't really have a smooth skin. It's and they're usually black colored and wrinkly like that. So
right.
That's really interesting. And I think you're right. I think he was from the sounds of it, there's a lot of pressure in the woods with a lot of hunters out in the woods. Like you said, most of the game was moving, and I would imagine that probably Bigfoot would be doing the same damn thing.
Right.
And I don't know really if Bigfoot really like to have encounters with men. I think sometimes maybe they do go looking for trouble, but I think they probably understand what guns are and what guns do, and when that's going off in the woods, they're probably ready to hide. But I kind of had a weird thought while you were talking about him. And did you ever see it move at all? Did you ever see any part, its knee or its hand or anything move?
Nothing. This thing is like a statue.
Yeah.
The only thing that moved was the hair.
I kind of wondered, especially, I wondered if maybe, well, since you were upwind from it, and it probably could have heard you or, heard you coming or smell you coming. There's a chance that it could have been injured. Or, who knows, with as many people in the woods, somebody could have cracked a shot off at it, at some point while they were out there hunting. Or it could have even been dead. And, it kind of, your description of how he was laying just kind of with an arm, around a boulder, without really seeing it. But it kind of seems, almost like, maybe it kind of fell there or laid back, and maybe its arm fell, or if it was injured or dead or something like that. But that's a
wild.
great story, man.
It is.
That is really cool.
The color of the fur is what I'm like, yeah, that would be the perfect color to blend in, especially in the fall.
Yep.
That reddish brown would blend right in, which obviously if you're an animal, over time, you would change your suit to to try to blend in. I mean, I keep tripping out about the size of the hands, man. I'm like picturing a baseball glove, and like the size of that, man, is like,
right.
That must have been, I've seen an animal before that I didn't know what it was. And I was tripping out, and was actually in Colorado. I saw a moose, and I didn't know what a moose looked like. Like, I knew what it looked like, but I could not place it at that time. I thought it was a big horse, and it was standing in the middle of the road, and I'm like, what is that, man? That's like the biggest horse I've ever seen, but it had this weird head, and I'm like, and I put it together hours later. Oh my God, I bet I saw a moose. But when you're standing there and you're looking at it, and it's like, you're seeing it in its environment, you're trying to put it all together like, okay, this is a creature I've never laid eyes on it, at least up close, and now I'm sitting here and feet away from this thing, man. That must have been a pretty powerful moment.
Yeah, it was definitely life changing. I had nightmares for a while, and then when nobody believes you, that's like it's like a pour salt on the wound,
Yeah. Sure,
right.
Because you're probably going, did I really see that then? I mean, maybe I was hallucinating or something, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, especially when you're a little kid and you're being told, no, that didn't happen, by adults, they're like, oh, whatever, that was your imagination. They're being dismissive. And, it's like when we had a guest on recently, Liz, who saw a ghost in her bed. And it turns out, she described the ghost to her grandmother, and her grandmother was like, yeah, whatever. And then she pulled out later, weeks later, her grandmother pulled out the family photo album. And it turns out that the woman that the girl saw was like her great grandmother, who she never met because it was long dead. And she described it perfectly. And she's like, that's who it was, So, I mean, you have that confirmation that there's something going on because of unsolved mysteries, but because you're a little kid, people are kind of like, oh, whatever, being super dismissive because, you're a kid.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So that is pretty much what sparked my interest. Now I have a group on Facebook called Encounters with Bigfoot. I love it. It's like-minded people. I'm always telling everybody, you will not get ridiculed in here.
Yeah.
It matter how wild,
right.
Whatever encounter you had, you're welcome to, share if you'd like.
Right.
So
that's what we do with this podcast, man. I mean, that's the same idea. We're giving people a platform to talk about stuff that they can't normally talk about because just what you said, you get ridiculed. People think of like, well, you put yourself into a category once you tell the story because people are going to think you're nuts.
Exactly.
But yeah, and I mean, that your story right there. I mean, that's one of those stories that you don't just bring that up the first time you meet someone,
or you do if you're really trying to test the water.
Right. Depends on the situation. Right.
Yeah. So years later, my father's getting close to retirement age. He decides to move from Colorado Springs back home in the San Luis Valley. He bought some property, and all of his brothers and sisters had a little property, a little mountain property. He was the only one that hadn't moved back home later on in life. So finally, around 1997, they landed up moving from Colorado Springs back home into the San Luis Valley, bought a little ranch, and right in the foothills, man. Beautiful. Got a river coming down, the whole 9 yards. So I throughout life, I date girls and fall on hard times and go back home and help my dad with the ranch, stay there a year or two, and move on and whatnot, go back to Colorado Springs or New Mexico. So I was kind of drifting here and there around my early 20s. And that place is very interesting. But I'll continue with a little bit more. I have 2 more possible encounters with Bigfoot.
Okay, great.
So later in life, my second possible encounter, I was 30-ish years old, and I was dating a lady, And we went to come down and visit the parents. And it was around this time of year. It was almost close to September. And we decided one afternoon, it was a beautiful, gorgeous evening, to drive up the canyon a ways and park. Because I told her, hey, I've seen a lot of weird stuff flying at night through these skies, and then let's go see if we see something. So we drive up the road and stuff, and it just started to get dark. And there was this beautiful little creek coming down. There was nobody around for miles, and there was this huge meadow behind us. And then the mountains really started, just right at the beginning of the mountains. So we drive up and park, and we have the windows down and stuff. And we had just pulled up, and maybe 25 to 30 seconds after I pulled up and turned off the truck, and rolled down the windows, this howlish growl. That's the only way I could explain it. I'm going to try to mimic it. I can't even come close to it. But at first I thought it was a coyote, because there is coyotes everywhere up there. But the way it finished off this, when it let out this howl, whatever, growl, it was kind of like a, oh. And I says, what the hell was that? And it shot off the mountain behind us, and it was very loud, and it echoed. And, her eyes got big. Ooh, what the hell was that? So I'm like, oh, my God. So I'm thinking that at first, yeah, it kind of was a coyote, but hell no. The way it went, I said, the coyote doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And it had a set of lungs on it. So I'm wondering, and I says, you know what? There's a lot of game in this field. Maybe something was getting ready to pounce on a deer, and you guys came up and you chased him away with your truck, and he was pissed.
Right.
That's the kind. I kind of started thinking, now it's pure dark. You don't have a flashlight. You're the only ones up here. This damn thing might even come down to the truck. Mm. So I'm starting to kind of freak out. She's freaking out and making things worse. And I could not pinpoint it. And I told myself, that's got to be a Bigfoot. There's nothing else that's going to do that with a set of lungs.
Well, I've made similar vocalizations whenever I've finally gotten home after a long drive and been holding my pee for like 3 hours. And finally get in there, man. And you have it, and it's just, it's a Zen-like pee. It's almost life-changing. It's a meditative state that you certainly get into. But I'm thinking that's a little bit more sedate than the one that you heard out there. So
yeah. Well, if this guy was pissing, he was passing a stone.
Oh man,
what I remember is it was just very loud and very. I mean, this thing had some lungs on it. I don't know what it was. I do know that what it wasn't, and it wasn't a coyote, wolf, bear. So that happened to me, and that was just like, okay. So then, a couple of years later, I'm dating another lady, which is now my wife, and my parents, me and my sister don't get home, back home a lot anymore. We both live in Colorado Springs. The ranch is about a 3-hour drive, about an hour from Taos. They're always trying to get us to go down. Hey, come down for Christmas time. Love you guys for you guys to come down for Christmas, Thanksgiving, those type of holidays. So we try to make it a point to do the drive, and my father's got some horses down there, and we one year me and the wife came down for Christmas time. It was very cold. There was 2 feet of snow on the ground. And my dad's been riding the horses by himself. He had nobody to ride with him. And he kept bugging me all morning. Hey, you should go for a ride with me on the horse. You should go for a ride. I'm like, Dad, it's super cold. I don't want to go and freeze my ass on the horse. Right. So he kind of gave me that look. I says, okay, Dad, let's go ahead, and when you feed them in the morning, go ahead and put them in the corral, and I'll go with you. So next morning, he corrals them up, brings out some hay. They come right to him. And we had breakfast and stuff, and I rope a horse, he ropes his, and we start saddling. And he's, like I says, the ranch is right when the hills just start. So maybe 3 miles away, you're already hitting timber and aspen. Okay. So it's pretty cool. We're right there.
Yeah.
So we saddle up the horses, and we go for a ride. So we start heading up into the timber, and we're riding maybe an hour into it, and my dad's like, you know what, we haven't seen an elk or a deer, with all this snow. I'm shocked. We always see something.
Yeah.
So we continue going a little ways, and I finally told my dad, says, Dad, I'm cold. I'm freezing. The horses are not happy being up here. I says, let's start heading back to the ranch. So he's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, let's go ahead and go. And we were kind of far up already. And he decided, he's like, the best way to get out of here is to cut through some private property, and we'll be on the county road. Actually, the road where I heard that growl, we're going to land up catching up into that road and then heading back down into the ranch. So I was like, you know what, Dad, I'm cold, whatever. There's nobody up here. It's too much snow. Let's do it. So we start heading down a canyon into some private property. And, I mean, the snow was deep. It was hitting the horses on the chest, and they were just struggling. They're breathing hard. It got deep. So my father's about maybe 10, 12 feet ahead of me, and I'm behind him. And the canyon was very shady, and I remember on the west side of the canyon, the sun would hit it, and I noticed that some of the hillside was dry. And I says, well, if I was a deer, there's food. So I was just kind of looking over there, and before you know it, I says, Dad, there's a big old buck just standing there looking at us. He's like, where? I was like, right there, watch. So we're looking at this buck, and then, they camouflage so wild. Next thing you know, hey, well, there's another one standing there. There's another one. They all kind of start, you know how deer are. They stand still. Well, next thing you know, you start seeing them. But we would never have known if we would have went right by them. So, that was cool. So we were looking at the deer, and so next thing I know, my dad goes, there's somebody watching us. And I says, oh, man, we're crossing through private property. I don't need no trouble. I'm cold, and then now this. Right. And then, like, well, shit, the snow is up to the horse's chest. There's no way in hell anybody's up here. Yeah. So he goes, watch, he's moving. I says, watch, he's running. So I'm like, where, Dad? And he's like, up there. Don't you see him? And he goes, that's not a person. I'm like, Dad, where? So, I'm trying to get my horse turned around and all that, and looking, behind me to see where he's pointing. So I get my horse turned around, and I'm looking where he's pointing, and finally I see what he's looking at. So, and this one's a little further. We're going down the canyon, and it's on top of the mountain, about, I'm going to say about 1,000 yards from us. Okay. But the trees on this mountainside, they were sporadic. It was just a tree here, a tree there. So you could see quite a bit in between everything. So what I saw, when I caught sight of it, what I saw was, the only way I could explain it was this huge figure, and it was hunched over, kind of like, you just did the 100-yard dash in high school. You're catching your breath, and you put your hands on your knees, and you're kind of hunched over, catching your breath. Well, that's what it looked like, this thing, the position that it was in. It looked like it had its hands on its knees, and it was just staring right at us. Wow. And it was huge. This thing had to have been close to 4 feet wide. And when it was hunched over, in my opinion, that's the stance that I believe I saw it in, it was at least 6.5 feet, and that was hunched. So this thing was bigger if it would have stood. Damn. So I'm looking at it, and it's in between two trees, and you could it was there. It was right there. And my dad already knows me and Bigfoot, and so he's still been on the fence about it. And the first thing he says is, I want out of here. And I said, no, I want a picture. So I start fumbling through my wife had this awesome camera with this great zoom, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got one. So I'm fumbling through the saddlebags, and I forgot the damn thing on the deck.
No.
I didn't want to go for the ride to begin with. I'm going to drag, and I left the camera on the deck.
Shit.
I was supposed to put it in the saddlebag, so I kicked my own ass still for this day for that.
What did your dad did you talk about this after the incident?
Yeah, here and there. He doesn't say much.
Okay.
I got him to speak up now for when was it? The 4th of July. We went back home. We were having a couple of beers with the family there at the ranch, and I kind of brung it up. And he doesn't deny it, but he doesn't like to speak about it because he doesn't want everybody to know. He's a man, and he got scared.
Sure.
So he'll talk about it if I bring it up.
Mm.
But he's one of those ones where, you know what, I don't want to be made fun of.
Right.
So I'm not going to mention it.
Right.
But he was scared. He wanted out of there. And but here's another thing. I didn't see it move again. He claims that it was running, and it stopped. When I finally caught sight of it, it wasn't moving. It was just hunched over, and it was looking at us.
Right.
But I said, it was about a couple yards. So detail. This one was more of a black. It was dark.
Right.
I don't know if it was one. I never saw it move.
Yeah.
It could have been a tree stump. He claims that it was moving.
Right.
I don't doubt him. I mean, he wanted out of there.
Sure.
So we continued on, and I watched it. I was just watching it the whole time we continued on, and it never moved. And I've noticed that with elk and deer. When they know that you've seen them, they will stand like a statue. They will blend right in with the shadow and go right by him.
That's right.
So I don't know if it was one. It's just one of them, hey, here's something that happened today.
Right. Wow. Wow.
How long did you say that you guys observed it?
I'm gonna say maybe about 2 minutes. But the whole time when I caught sight of it, it never moved. But he swears that it was moving.
Right.
But it would not move when I caught sight of it, and we went down. It was big, man. I didn't want to mess with it.
Yeah.
And so I followed my dad, and we headed out, and we caught that county road, and then we went back home, and that was pretty much it for that one.
Wow.
Wow.
Damn, dude.
That's great, man. That's intense. Hey, that's a nice t-shirt you got on there.
Oh, thanks, dude. It's brand new. Do you like that? It's one of the official What's Your Weird Story t-shirts.
Where'd you get that?
It's funny that you ask. I just got it off the brand new Spreadshirt.com site for the What's Your Weird Story podcast. There's no www. You just go straight to shop.spreadshirt.com/what's without the apostrophe WHATS -WEIRD-STORY, and that'll take you right there.
I mean, you can never own enough clothing.
Well, it's true, Barry. There's t-shirts for the ladies because, they're cut differently. There's hoodies, which are really cool. There's 2 different kinds of hoodies, and there's also tote bags, so you can tote your stuff.
That's so cool, man.
So if you guys go out to Spreadshirt.com, What's Your Weird Story, currently there are 2 designs, but there will be more going up very soon. So just keep your eyes out for that. And if you decide to get one of their shirts, tag yourself on Instagram to ours or Facebook. Show your love. Show us what you got. Let's see your true colors.
1,000 yards is a pretty good clip too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, you could see everything because the background was all white with snow.
Right.
And it was in between some trees, but it still had 5 feet on each side of it of snow.
Sure.
So it was there. I mean,
right.
There was, we could see it. It's just not super close, but
right.
It was big.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Wow. That's intense. Damn.
That is really cool. Did your dad happen to say how fast he thought, or how because the snow was probably just as deep up there, maybe even a little deeper. Did he say how fast he thought it was moving through?
I never really, we don't talk about it too much. He's just one of those guys that he's really conscientious about his character and reputation, especially in a small town. You know how it is in a small town.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah. He doesn't speak too much about it. You know what? I might see him tomorrow. I'm going to hit him up. They're supposed to come into the spring. I'm going to hit him up about that.
You should, man. You should.
Yeah, but no, he was very panicked. He said it was moving.
Right.
And he wanted out of there. And
well, it's I had something like this kind of happen with my dad. And we saw something together, and I've said this before on the show, but when you have somebody with you in a instance like this, even though the other person may not want to talk about it, that's kind of validation. You know what I'm saying? Just like, okay, I get it. You don't want to discuss it, but you know that you saw something, and I saw something. Because it is to say out loud, even in the company of people that you know really well, that you might have encountered something. That's a big statement. That's a big statement. So I get why he would feel that way about it, but man, just wild.
Yeah, but so that's another one. I can't confirm it.
Sure.
It was far. If it would have moved, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm on the fence that 50% of me says it could have been a big stump busted over, and 50% of me says, well, Dad was shooken up and he said it was moving.
See, and that's what gets me and convinces me of the story is that your dad, who he's like how you describe him, and as he's a hunter and all of that, he knows the difference between seeing an elk or whatever. Moving across. He knows the difference of how things move.
Right.
And, he saw something that scared him enough that he doesn't even want to acknowledge it completely. Yeah. But he can't, he can't completely deny it because it scared him enough to where he said, we got to go because of that.
Right.
Do you see that? And he wanted you to, see it and acknowledge it. But then it's like also, I want you to see that, but I don't want you to tell me what it is because I don't want to be scared because I don't want to have to change my worldview just that ever so slightly much because that's just freaky. So
did you ever see
to me?
Did you guys ever see the footage of? I think it's fairly recently of the Bigfoot that is going across the road in the snow, and it's the snow is like as deep as what you're talking about, and this thing is running like I'm walking through like a foot of snow. You know what I mean? It's running, and the road is cleared of snow, or it's packed down. And when it runs across, when it breaks that wall, the snow just flies, everywhere and continues to run. It's like, whoa, that. I don't know if it's been debunked or not, but it's impressive. If it's a person running, he's a big person, it would take a lot to move through the snow like it moved. So I'm curious to see if that's maybe the way he is moving, if that's what your dad saw, was just kind of these long strides,
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'll have to hit him up and maybe if I get a few beers down and maybe I'll
there you go. Lube him up.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That always helps with the stories,
For sure.
Yeah.
The ones that people don't want to tell or shouldn't tell,
Right.
That's
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
Pretty much the only other evidence that I have with I guess a Bigfoot type creature was back in 2012. Me and my wife went camping, and my parents were supposed to join us a day or two later. I went to go find a camping spot, and then I would get cell service. Hey, Dad, we're over here. Come over there. And here's where we're at. So I went up first, and I don't remember if it was that same day or it was the next day. I went looking for firewood. So I jumped on my ATV. I got some chains and stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I am not sweating hard. I'm not going to work hard. Took a little saw with me. I'm going to load this bike, and it's going to be real nice. So the canyon where we're camping, it was all national forest, and there people do frequent the canyon and camp. So wood is scarce. Everybody, all the firewood next to camp is gone. Everybody has already annihilated that. So now you got to go further into the woods to go and find firewood. So there was this hillside up a canyon, and just it was wild. And I says, I know there's wood up in there, and nobody's been up here. So let me backtrack. I've already hit this hillside previously in other years, and I always had success with wood. So I already knew where I could find wood, and nobody's been up. So when I went up there, I to the area where I was always getting wood every summer, I encountered some stick structures, and that blew my mind.
Yeah,
because for all these years, even being in the Bigfoot group and all that, I didn't believe in the stick structure stuff. I really didn't. Even the guys in my group would post these stick structures, and I always thought it was bullshit.
Right.
But then when you run into it yourself,
right,
nobody around, then you start scratching your head.
Right.
Right. And I have actually, I uploaded the photos on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just, I just had a little flip phone at the time.
Okay.
And I snapped some photos of it, and I started investigating them. And there was 3 of them up that I encountered.
Okay.
I've got pictures and all that. Very odd. Just the way they were. Were they
were they bent? Like the bent where they take the trees and they bend them together and they weave them into something, or what?
Yeah. Are you guys able to jump on YouTube?
Yeah. Let me.
Yeah. Okay.
Bring it up here.
While you do that, I got to pee real bad. Otherwise, I'm going to be making some Bigfoot noises here. But let me be right back.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. I'm pulling up YouTube right now.
Alrighty. I'm hoping you can find it. It should be Bigfoot tree structures near Salida, Colorado, and it's just a real photo.
Yeah. Here it is. Hold
on. So when I snapped the photos, I brought my father back up the next day.
Okay.
I was like, I want a witness to this.
So it looks like there's poles that are leaning up on trees, and you're pointing to something in one of those pictures.
There's a branch placed about 8 feet up.
Okay.
In between 2 trees.
Okay.
And what really sparked my interest is, in order to get that high, there was little old branches going up this tree.
Okay.
If a child would lean on it, the branches would snap. All these branches were still intact.
Wow.
So that I got to scratching my head. I was like, you can't just climb that tree because you'll bust these little old branches.
Yeah.
You have to be 8 feet tall to.
Right. I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what kind of like, you know what? Maybe there is something to this tree structure gig or whatever.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So that's what I ran into, and I brought my father and my nephews and nieces. They all showed up the next day, and I was like, Dad, you got to go check out what I found here when I was searching for wood.
Right. Wow.
My nephew was making fun of me the whole time, and then when we got to the area, he would not get off the bike. He would in his little pants. So, and I told myself, I want to take a picture with you. He's like the last picture there.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, so you remember the next time you're making fun of Uncle Bigfoot. Look, this is what this is what we saw. So don't just right away, make fun of me.
Yeah, right.
What is that again, so that people can pull it up?
Yeah. It's if you search on YouTube for Bigfoot tree structure near Salida, it'll come up. 2017. Near Salida. It's the whole thing is Bigfoot tree structures near Salida, Colorado, 2017. It'll pop up. Interesting.
So, Lonnie, back in your first story, when you were a kid and you were on your hunting trip, and I meant to ask you this when you first finished that story, but when you were talking about that story, when you guys hit the Jeep Trail, you mentioned TP type structure that your dad and uncle dismissed as probably a blind. Mm-hmm. Thinking about it now, what do you think you saw?
It was very similar. it was poles, and they were big poles. That first one, this one here, the one here in Salida, the trees weren't that big around there. The one over in Pikes Peak, the first one, those were some massive, at least 10 inches round.
Wow.
Poles.
Damn.
All I know is it was something with hands made it. And when I think about it now, I remember noticing it. I mean, it stuck out like a sore thumb, but it was mixed in with a lot of trees. But you could see something built it.
Right.
But the logs were very big, like a little too big for just the average Joe to put crisscrossed for no reason.
Right.
Right. Yeah. If they were building a bear blind, they wouldn't use, logs that big. It'd be just enough, lighter things. You wouldn't cut necessarily whole trees down.
Right. Small branches, stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't know. I have more questions than answers.
Right.
Just very unusual.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what this whole these stories like this they do. They raise a lot of questions, and
definitely more questions raised than answers resolved. So
right, which is, and we took a trip down to our the state Bigfoot festival down here in Oklahoma a couple of years ago. And it was really fun, man. We had a good time and talking to people, and it was cool because people would just talk openly about it. They weren't afraid to tell you that, hey, man, we've seen some weird stuff. And and when you're out where they hold the festival, the landscape. I mean, you could see how it would be possible if these things exist, how they could just sort of blend into their surroundings and not be found if they didn't want to be. It's such a vast area of mountains and trees and but you think too they've got to camp somewhere, they've got to sleep somewhere, and that's why those structures are so interesting.
I don't know what to make of them. I don't know if it's a territorial thing.
Right.
Very weird. I don't have an explanation to what's the reasoning behind it.
Right.
Yeah, because the way that they were set up, it's the functionality is definitely difficult to figure out, because it could be many things, and it could be that it's, like you said, some territorial markings, that says, hey, we're big and strong and we can do this, we can move these things around,
right.
or something like that. Who knows? But it could be that they were somehow they'd made more of it as a shelter, a lean-to type thing, or But then again, it also doesn't look like it has that kind of stuff around it. So I don't know. It is a mystery. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you could clearly tell something was able to think similarly to a human. The way way it was designed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just a dumb chimp.
Right.
I mean, something. It had thought. It was able to think and process.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that
there was
another,
some kind of reasoning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, your mission into the woods that day was to get firewood. Did you fuck with Bigfoot's stash, or did you go find your own shit?
No, I didn't touch them. I
wouldn't have either.
Yeah. I want to. One of these days, I'm going to go back to that area and just take a peek to see if there's any more of them. Or
that'd be cool.
My wife won't go with me. She's very skeptical, but when I start, she knows I'm. If I say something, that's it. So she will not go up there. she don't want to see exactly what I'm talking about.
I understand.
It's just funny. It's like, no, I want to stay out of that.
Right. That's great.
But I would like to go back and snap some more photos.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. But that's about it as far as my interactions with a Bigfoot type creature. You know, I spent a lot of time in the woods, especially when I was in my 20s. A lot of times on horseback by myself. It was a very small town. I'm very, very familiar with the woods and hunting and the whole 9 yards. But that's pretty much about it for Bigfoot.
Well, I think a key thing too when you talk about that kind of stuff is that you know, you're a guy that's very familiar with the outdoors, and you're keen. You know, your senses are really, you know, heightened more than the average person. You know, just kind of what you were talking about before about knowing how different animals move. You know, where they would normally be, what they would normally be doing. So, you know, if you get that sense of what you saw was what you saw, then, you know, I mean, I think you're as good a judge as any to know when you see something that is out of place or different.
Hey everybody, you're listening to the What's Your Weird Story podcast. You probably knew that already because you're listening or downloaded to the episode off of your iTunes or your Spotify or whatever place you get your podcast from. We want to thank you for listening. We also want to remind you to like us, follow us, subscribe to us, make sure that you get your new podcast episode every week. We'd also like to ask you to rate and review so that we can grow our audience, we can have more friends, we can have more stories. So thanks for listening to What's Your Weird Story.
I mean, that was pretty incredible. Those were some great stories, man. I mean, dude, really interesting, original. You know, I haven't heard a story like, you know, a lot of what he was talking about.
Yeah, man, we love a good Bigfoot story here on the podcast. And surprisingly, you know, we're not getting a lot, but man, when we do, man, they come through, they deliver, and they're just fantastic.
Yeah, what'd you think, Hub? I mean,
oh man, you know, I enjoyed the stories. I thought, you know, especially, you know, he really kind of hit a home run right out of the gate with that first story.
Yeah.
As, you know, a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old kid, however he was, however old he was, when, you know, he saw that Bigfoot. And, you know, I would imagine, you know, he was curious about what it was, what he was walking over there to see, you know. And I think had he have known, you know, when he first saw it, you know, had he have known what he would see when he got over there closer, I'll bet he never would have walked over there.
Right.
Yeah.
But to see that thing and to be that close, and it never even had an idea that he was there.
Yeah.
Or if it did, and the Bigfoot just knew that he wasn't going to harm him somehow, and he just stayed perfectly still.
Yeah. I think that the Bigfoot would have had to have known, would have had to have heard him, would have had to smell him coming from downwind, and probably just chose to try to remain still, like he mentioned in the story with his dad, how it stood still,
right,
and how a lot of times you'll see animals, especially if they're not predators, they'll stand still for a minute.
Right.
To see, you know, just maybe to try and disguise, try to not be seen.
Yeah. Because
you can see movement better than you can see stillness, you know?
I have a very vivid picture of what he said, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean,
yeah,
it is. I don't know. I mean, I've been in that situation. Like when we were kids, we used to play Gray Ghost, you know, at night.
Oh yeah.
You know, and the whole idea was to hide, and so you'd have to be very still, you know. And I can remember a couple of times being caught, but like you're in that mode of like, I can't move a muscle. I would imagine that's probably what was happening there, unless kind of what you're talking about, Hub, is maybe he had been shot or was injured in some way. But regardless, coming up upon a scene like that and seeing something like, oh my God, there it is right in front of my face, and the hand, the size of the hand and the leg, it's like, oh man, it's pretty, it puts me there, you know?
Right. Yeah. His description of the events, you know, everything that he described, you know, he described with a lot of detail, and it really did kind of put you there. And you can tell Lonnie's a smart guy. He knows about the woods, and he knows about the creatures of the woods. And, you know, I think when you're a hunter, I think that you kind of get an eye for game.
Right.
And you can kind of make out shapes that maybe somebody who doesn't spend a lot of time in the woods looking for movement, and you notice little things, little movements that other people might not recognize.
Yes.
And that's, you know, that could lend to why he's had, you know, these sightings and things, because he's aware of his surroundings.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It is amazing, you know, when you spend time in nature. I think oftentimes we forget this when we're city dwellers, but your senses are heightened to their highest degree. I mean, that's where humans have survived for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years, and it's, the mechanism is built into our bodies to be operating in those kinds of surroundings. And you can tell that, like if I'm watching out my back, you know, if I'm sitting on my patio, I watch the birds, because we get just an array of birds around, and you won't even see the bird in the tree but until it moves, and that catches your eye, and you think, oh wow, like I didn't even realize, you know, that it was there. And, you know, multiply that by 1,000, you know, when you're seeing these large animals, and in the areas that he's seeing them in, it's impressive.
Yeah. And plus, like the animals know how to kind of camouflage themselves,
right?
You know, and they know how to behave. And, you know, so that's why, you know, him seeing and noticing these things really, like, I think it's a big validation
for sure,
you know, on what, and, you know, hunters are usually people who are, fishermen are the ones who are known to, you know, exaggerate, you know, their catch or exaggerate what they've seen out there in the land. But, you know, often, you know, hunters might, you know, maybe they add a couple of pounds to a buck or something, maybe a couple of points. But generally speaking, you know, they're all down, they're very down to earth and very, you know,
pragmatic.
You know, yes, thank you. That's exactly the word I was looking for. So when you see something outside of, you know, what's your registered universe, you know, something outside of the normal, when you have that moment of high strangeness and you see something that's unfamiliar, people tend to have reactions like his dad. He saw this thing. He acknowledged he saw this thing. He wanted to get his son's recognition of the same thing, but he didn't want to name it. He didn't want to see it. He didn't want to observe it any longer. He just wanted to get the fuck out.
Right. And
didn't want to address it anymore, you know, and all he'll say is, yeah, I saw something, you know, basically.
For sure, man. Well, it was great. It was great to have him on.
Yeah,
Lonnie
great stuff. Thank you, Lonnie.
Yeah, and he's coming back. We got more from him. We got part 2. We get into one of my favorite subjects, which is the UFO stuff, and he's got a ton of stories.
He does
of stuff. And so once again, thank you, Lonnie, and thank everybody for tuning in. We'll have more for you next week with Lonnie, and in the meantime, go check out our Patreon. We've got some bonus content that you can get there at our different levels there, and go and support your local UFO group. I don't know, do something, be productive, have a good week.
Yeah,
go do that. Go have a good week. If all of a sudden you remember some interesting creatures you saw while you were out hunting, or maybe you saw some strange lights in the sky, or maybe you woke up next to your dead relative, if you got a story for us, or maybe, it's not even like that. Maybe you got a cool job. You you almost became an undertaker, but had to stop because people were fighting in the schools, or, or you had taken too much acid or whatever. If you got stories, everybody's got good stories. Everybody's got at least one good story. We want to hear it. If you got a lot, we want to hear them all. Get a hold of us, be on the show, be a big part of Weirdsville. We know you're listening, so you're already a big part of it, and we appreciate that. So I guess to wrap it up for this week, Mr. Hubbard, thank you for joining us and being support through this and on the show. And Lonnie, again, thank you for joining us. And in the meantime, I believe you guys have got some swimming parties, pool parties to go to. So I'll just say, be safe.
Be weird.
As always, if you have a weird story, we want to hear it.
If you have a lot of them, we want to hear them all.
We can't do this podcast without your invaluable contributions.
Whether it's sharing your stories,
listening,
rating,
and spreading the word about the podcast. Thanks for listening. Till next time, be safe.
Be weird.
The stories presented on the What's Your Weird Story podcast are, to our knowledge, true experiences that our guests have had. We can't take the time to research all claims made, and besides, it's just not as fun.